There's a time to be risky, and there's a time to be safe. The early rounds of your fantasy football draft just isn't one of those risky times. There is nothing wrong, no matter what anyone tells you, with playing a little bit safe early and then taking some calculated risks. I mean, it's the strategy I've used for like 20 plus years, and I think it's worked out pretty well up until this point. But when it comes to the running back position in fantasy football, you better believe I'm looking for some of those safe studs that can anchor my team. That's right, today we're going to be trying to find some of the safest stud running backs in fantasy football here for 2023. And we're going to do it in a way that no one else on YouTube does. But first, a like goal. If this video right here can get over 1,000 likes, I will pick a random commenter down below for a free 2023 fantasy football draft guide. These things are flying off the virtual shelves right now. You don't want to miss out, so make sure you hit the like button and leave a comment below. Maybe you don't want to just put it up for like a chance that you get it and you just want a draft guide. Sign up over on Underdog Fantasy right now, a new account with referral code Headliners. You make an initial $10 deposit, you're gonna get a free draft guide there as well. Plus, we'll match your initial deposit. I mean, it's a great value, a great deal right now. Make sure you're taking advantage of it. There's links down below in the description. But like I said, today we're trying to find those safe running backs, and we're going to compare 25 of the top running backs right now in the NFL up against 7 different metrics. Now, maybe you're wondering what those 7 different metrics are. Don't worry, I got you covered. The first one, average games played, right? We want guys who are on the field majority of the time. How about average touches per game? So when they're actually in the game, are they getting a large amount of volume? Because we all know that touches equal points. What about goal line carries, right? Chances and opportunities for touchdowns? Those are a good thing in fantasy football. Then we got average yards per touch. When we're getting these touches, how many yards are we gaining with them? We're trying to find that boosted efficiency. What about targets per game? That's right. When we have some pass catching upside running backs that also run the ball on the ground, it really makes that weekly floor even safer. We also have average fantasy points scored per game, right? That's what we're doing this for, right? It's fantasy points. And then lastly, ADP, projected 2023 ADP. We're trying to find the best guys at the cheapest price. So we're going to take these 7 different metrics and we're going to grade each one of the 25 running backs up against each other in each one of these metrics. We're then going to give them a score of 1 to 25 for each metric, however they finished in each category. Player with the highest point total at the end gives us our safer running backs. But maybe you're thinking, well, that's not going to help us a whole lot for 2023. It may tell us from the past. Well, when we're all done, we'll take a look at the top running back finishers here, really try to dissect what their outlooks look like here in 2023, and make some decisions and adjustments based off of what we know so far this year. Now, obviously, we're not using rookie running backs, right? We have nothing to go off from years past, so we can't really call them safe if they've never played in the NFL before. Now, I've tried to pull 3-year averages wherever I could, but obviously some of these guys that we talk about haven't been in the NFL for 3 years, maybe 2 years, maybe just 1 year, but I still wanted to include them in this exercise so we can start to gauge them here as the seasons go on. So now that I've got that all out of the way and you kind of have an understanding of what it is we're doing today, let's take a look at the 25 running backs that we included in this little exercise today. And as you can see, we have all the big time names here, right? The Christian McCaffreys, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, J.K. Dobbins, Dameon Pierce, Miles Sanders, Dalvin Cook, Cam Akers, James Conner, David Montgomery, A.J. Dillon, Alvin Kamara, and Antonio Gibson. Officially out of breath. We got a lot of running backs that we're going to put here head to head in these 7 metrics. The first one we're going to be looking at is average games played per year, right? We want guys who are going to be on the field. This is one of those metrics that may hurt some of those guys that don't have longer careers, right? We see Breece Hall at the very bottom of column 2. Dude's only had 1 year and he got hurt with a major injury, torn his ACL. So of course that's going to hurt him in a metric like this. Christian McCaffrey there at the bottom, not a huge surprise, right? Even though he played a full season last year, hasn't really been known as an NFL Ironman. Not like what Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, both 17 games. These guys aren't missing games. We got Josh Jacobs, Tony Pollard, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, A.J. Dillon, and Antonio Gibson, over 15 per season. And really, that's what I'm looking for, right? Anything close to 15 has got to be what we're shooting for, because the running back position is hard in the NFL. I don't know if you realize that or not. It's a position where you get beat up a lot, and any player on any team during any game can suffer an injury. It's not uncommon for a lot of guys to miss a game here or there. Anything over 15 is like chef's kiss, right? That's what we're absolutely looking for. What about average touches per game? Holy Derrick Henry, 25.4 touches per game on average. What happens to that number when DeAndre Hopkins is now in this offense? Is it going to come down? Honestly, I think that it probably does a little bit, probably closer to that 20 to 21 mark. It's still Derrick Henry. It's still going to be a run-heavy offense. He's going to be heavily utilized inside the goal line. It's still Derrick Henry. Don't overthink it too much. How much of a surprise is it that Dalvin Cook is sitting at 21.41 and yes, still unemployed? A lot of people out there hate Dalvin Cook and want to call him washed and that he's just no good anymore. Follow Dalvin Cook's name throughout these metrics, and then we'll take a look at it at the end. Dalvin Cook has been a very good running back for a very long time here in the NFL. We also got Joe Mixon over 20 with Josh Jacobs, Najee Harris, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor. That's your 20-plus club, right? Very few running backs in the NFL average 20 touches per game. If you have a running back that has that high of an average, they're going to have a higher ADP for a reason, right? Because most teams right now in the NFL are going to an NFL running back committee. Not a whole lot of bell cows left. Those guys are the creme de la creme when it comes to 20-plus touches. But Alvin Kamara is close as well at 19.46. What about Dameon Pierce? Obviously, small sample size, but 19.23. I really hate that they brought in Devin Singletary, and I hope that they don't overthink things in Houston, because Dameon Pierce could be another one of those guys that can handle 20 touches a week. We see Saquon Barkley here with David Montgomery. Got to expect DeMont's numbers not going to be at 18 anymore, right? I expect him to be a little bit closer to that 10 to 12 range every single week. Nick Chubb at 18.2. No more Kareem Hunt. Could we see that number, edge into that 20-plus category? That is possible. James Conner at 16.39. Everybody hates James Conner, and trust me, I'm a Cardinals fan. I think they're going to suck. Kyler Murray is not going to be 100%, and James Conner is going to have to touch the football a lot. That's another one of those guys that it wouldn't surprise me if he creeps up towards the 18 mark or so here this year. We got A.J. Dillon, J.K. Dobbins. They're at the bottom of the list, averaging right around 10, 11 touches per game, with Tony Pollard down there as well. But with no more Ezekiel Elliott, we have to expect that number to climb up maybe a little bit here in 2023. How about goal line touches, right? We like them TDs around here. TDs are great for fantasy football. So in 2022, here's how many goal line carries they averaged per game. Now, obviously, there's not going to be anybody with a goal line touch every single week, but Joe Mixon at the top of this list at 0.73 goal line carries per game. That tells me that the offense there in Cincinnati is having a lot of touchdown chances, and when on the goal line, Joe Mixon is going to be the guy they go to, especially now they no longer have Samaje Perine. Derrick Henry second on this list, not a surprise. Tied right there with Saquon Barkley. Just behind them is Jonathan Taylor. Dalvin Cook again, once again in the top 5 of another metric at 0.53. Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, Travis Etienne, all right here over 0.5. So that means that they're averaging right around 8 or 9 goal line carries a season. Doesn't sound like a big number, but that right there is what? A chance at around 8 touchdowns alone. So we'll definitely take those goal line carries. One thing we can take away from this metric here, Aaron Jones don't get the ball on the goal line, right? 0.06, barely even registered on the scale. Obviously, A.J. Dillon, somebody who's going to be a little bit more utilized on the goal line. He's a little bit better built for it, I guess you could say. Aaron Jones, not a goal line guy, right? He's a big play guy, not a goal line guy. J.K. Dobbins, he's been hurt so much here to start his career. Obviously not somebody they've utilized on the goal line very much either, especially with Gus Edwards there, who sometimes gets that call when he's healthy, right? What about average yards per touch, though? We want to get as many yards as possible with the touches that we get, and holy freaking Breece Hall, 6.9. That number is stupid. I mean, it's almost 2 yards more than Derrick Henry, who's at 5.03. Even the numbers for J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, those numbers are borderline stupid too. Over 5.5 yards per touch. Just think about that. Now, obviously, when we're talking about touches, we're talking about carries and receptions. Anything over 5.5 is going to be elite in the NFL. Whose name falls in that category again? Dalvin Cook, still up there at the top. Pay attention to Dalvin Cook here. Is it a surprise that we see the bottom 4 guys on this list? Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, Najee Harris, and Cam Akers. I mean, these are 4 guys that we've talked about at length here for multiple years where they need a lot of volume. They're not very efficient. If they're not getting big volume, they're not doing very much for you weekly. Cam Akers at 3.63, the only running back on this list sub 4 yards per touch. That is woof. That is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. What about targets per game? Average targets per game, they're important, right? It really helps boost up the floor each and every week. Is a running back always going to go out and rush for 100 yards and a touchdown? No. We need some work in the passing game from time to time. So when we have maybe a down game on the ground, maybe we get a little bit of something on the side in the passing game. Now, Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Ramondre Stevenson, part due, Alvin Kamara, no shock, right? These guys are all over 5 targets per game. But what about some of the guys at the bottom of the list? Do they have a chance to increase this year? J.K. Dobbins at 1 target per game. Just 1. They've added more pass-catching weapons in Baltimore. We know that Rashad Bateman is back and healthy. Does that number come up? It can't go down, right? If it's going to go down, it's going to go to 0. So I don't think it's going to go down. But I don't know if it's going to go up very high either. Cam Akers at 1.2. Don't expect a whole lot in the pass-catching arena for Cam Akers. Miles Sanders, though. What about Miles Sanders? Now, Philadelphia didn't want to use him in the passing game because of the likes of a Kenneth Gainwell. But what about Miles Sanders in Carolina? When we really don't have anybody else to worry about in that backfield, that number could definitely come up for Miles Sanders. Nick Chubb at 2.2. No more Kareem Hunt. What if he only got 2 more targets per game? Now all of a sudden he's up in the 4s and he's over in the middle of column 1 and is definitely somebody who's even safer than he already is. Kenneth Walker at 2.3. Does that number come down at all? Does it stay the same with the addition of Zach Charbonnet? In Seattle? There's some guys with some potential at the bottom of this list to really increase some of their numbers. What about fantasy points per game? That's why we're here, right? Fantasy points per game. We want them points. And is it crazy that Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, all these guys are at the top? No, they're the best running backs in football for a reason. Breece Hall at 15.1 stands out once again. Can Breece Hall sustain that number for an entire season? I really don't believe so, not in 2023. 2024, maybe. But unless this dude is like Adrian Peterson level, I don't know if we see him get anywhere close to that number here this year. At the bottom of the list, we got 4 guys that are sub-double digits. You don't ever want to be sub-double digits. Put that down in the comment section if you're paying attention, sub-double digits. Because we got Cam Akers, A.J. Dillon, Antonio Gibson, and J.K. Dobbins. Now with Akers, do I expect any more this year? Not really. You know I'm not a Cam Akers truther. A.J. Dillon has a chance for 10 plus, right? No more Aaron Rodgers. Going to have to utilize the running game a little bit more. Sure, I can see that number creeping up a little bit. Antonio Gibson at 9.5. New offense in Washington. Maybe with offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, we see a little bit more in that pass-catching game for Antonio Gibson, a la Jerick McKinnon in Kansas City the past couple years. That number has a chance to be 10 plus. J.K. Dobbins. I love J.K. Dobbins. I want to see J.K. Dobbins get 18 touches a week because if he does, he's probably going to win a lot of people their fantasy football leagues. I just don't know if we see that from him this year in Baltimore. I'm hoping we do though. What about projected ADP though now, right? Because we want the best we can get at the cheapest price possible. Well, the cheapest price out there right now is Antonio Gibson and Alvin Kamara. A lot of people still have no idea what's going to happen with suspension of Alvin Kamara. Sure, he's not going to jail, but that does not mean that the NFL may not still suspend him. What type of game total are we looking at? Honestly, I'm kind of thinking about a 4-game suspension. I have no insider information with that, though, so I have no idea. The way that I really go after this when I'm in a fantasy football draft is if we have a player like Alvin Kamara where there's something pending out there, if I don't know the facts at the time of the draft, I'm not going to draft the player. I would hate to go into it thinking, oh yeah, he's going to get 2 or 3 games, and then all of a sudden he gets 8 and you're effed because you drafted him for no apparent reason. A.J. Dillon still super cheap. David Montgomery in Detroit. Can you imagine the value of David Montgomery if something were to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs? Good Lord. James Conner, talked about him. If Kyler Murray's not 100%, we're going to see a whole lot of James Conner. Cam Akers still super cheap. Dalvin Cook at 61. His projected ADP, 61st overall as of right now. Now, obviously, that number will change once he actually signs with a team because people have an understanding of what his role is going to be. It's not a surprise. The bottom of column 2, these are all the guys you're having to pay a hefty price tag for, right? Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb. We all know those guys are very expensive on draft day. But remember, we took these 7 metrics. We then gave them a score of 1 to 25 in each one of them. The highest score wins, right? We're looking for the highest point total. And when we did that across all 7 metrics, these were the top 15 running backs overall with the highest scores. Look at number 1. It's Dalvin Cook. Mr. Unemployed himself was the number 1 safest running back based off of the 7 metrics that we talked about here today. And dude looking for a job. Now, obviously, we got Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler. What about Joe Mixon? He's at a discount right now because everybody hates Joe Mixon. We got Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, Najee Harris, Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard, and Antonio Gibson. But I mentioned at the beginning of the show that this is based off of historical data, but what happens in 2023? A couple of these guys have some different situations. We know Dalvin Cook's going to be on a new team. Josh Jacobs doesn't have Derek Carr for a quarterback anymore. It could be Jimmy G, and if this offense struggles overall, he may not have the opportunity that he had last year. Alvin Kamara and his possible suspension. Aaron Jones has a new quarterback there in Green Bay and Jordan Love. No more Aaron Rodgers. Nick Chubb has the backfield basically to himself right now with no more Kareem Hunt. I do like Jerome Ford, but he's not going to get a huge role to start the season. Jonathan Taylor, he's got himself a new head coach and a new quarterback there with Anthony Richardson. Breece Hall, coming off a major injury with his ACL tear, also has a new quarterback in Aaron Rodgers and more pass-catching weapons in that offense. Tony Pollard no longer has Zeke in the backfield, but also has a new offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore, now in Los Angeles with the Chargers. And then Antonio Gibson also has a new quarterback, in which seems like it's going to be Sam Howell, and a new offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy, who really wants to try to utilize a 2-back system here in Washington. Yeah, that could be pretty intriguing at the price that you can get an Antonio Gibson. But I can hear you out there. I can hear you saying, gee, thanks, Jake. Thanks for making a video telling us that Josh Jacobs and Austin Eckler and Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry, thanks for telling us they're good. You got to remember, that's not the purpose of this show. Whenever you build metrics like this and you have a lot of high-end finishers in it, that means you're looking at the right stats, because we're trying to find guys with similarities to these high-performing running backs. So really the guys that I'm looking at here are not all the guys that are highlighted in green, because we already know they're already good. It's the guys that I have highlighted in white that we're really paying attention to. Now you can also see that Alvin Kamara and Breece Hall, I colored them red. There's still a lot of unknowns around both of these guys, right? We need to know how long that suspension is going to be for Alvin Kamara. We need to see Breece Hall 100% before we really actually know. But it's the other guys that I'm really paying attention to. Dalvin Cook, of course. Joe Mixon, you may hate him, but the guy's a top 12 running back almost every single year, and you're getting him at a discount this year. Just say thank you and move on, especially with no Samaje Perine. Travis Etienne, I see more talk about Tank Bigsby than I see about Travis Etienne. In an offense that's going to be as high-powered as it is in Jacksonville, I'm not just writing off Travis Etienne like he's yesterday's news because they drafted Tank Bigsby. Don't overthink it, people. When you overthink it too much, you get screwed in fantasy football. Aaron Jones. I don't know if I can say how much I love Aaron Jones any more than I already have. Right? Aaron Jones is by far probably one of my must-have running backs this year. That big playability in an offense that needs big playmakers. I love Aaron Jones this year. Najee Harris, an improved offensive line. He's coming into the year healthy. Don't forget, last year, he came into the season coming off a Lisfranc injury that really held him out of the preseason. We knew he was going to start slow, but now all of a sudden he's 100% healthy with an improved offense with Kenny Pickett in year 2, and then Antonio Gibson. A lot of people want to come on here and say, hey, you like Brian Robinson or Antonio Gibson? I give the same response all the time. I like both because I like how you can get them cheap on draft day. I like that there's a new improved offense overall in Washington. They're going to put up more points this year than what we saw last last year. I love Sam Howell, and even if he doesn't keep the job, I don't think Jacoby Brissett is half bad either. If you're looking for somebody in the later rounds, could you imagine if you have Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson goes down, you're looking at somebody who's verged top 12 every single week, plus on a week-by-week basis, has some weekly flex upside even with a healthy Brian Robinson. So Antonio Gibson definitely on my radar late in drafts. So what do you think? Were there any names in today's show that you really started to scratch your head on a little bit? You didn't expect them to finish as low or as high as they did in some of these metrics? I would love to know that down below in the comment section. Plus, we know this video is going to hit 1,000 likes. Almost all of them do. I need to start raising the bar a little bit, but remember, once we hit that 1,000 like mark, I'm going to be giving away a free fantasy football draft guide to somebody down below in the comment section. So hit that like button, leave that comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, because we're talking all things fantasy football 7 days a week from now until the Super Bowl, basically. So make sure you sit down, buckle up, because we're going to have a great time. But for now, I'm going to get out of here for the day. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day, and then do your part to make the world a better place.